Adolf Hitler's mornings began later than one might expect for a man of such driven ambition. He typically rose around 10 in the morning, a stark contrast to the early rising he often preached as virtuous for the German people. His breakfast was simple, almost Spartan, consisting of bread, marmalade, and coffee. Hitler devoured information, poring over reports from the front lines and analyses of both domestic and foreign press coverage. He obsessed over every detail, seeking any hint of dissent or challenge to his authority. This seemingly mundane morning routine belied the storm of paranoia and megalomania that raged within Hitler's mind. His fear of assassination was all-consuming, leading to elaborate security protocols and a deep distrust of even his closest advisors. Every bite of food was first tasted by dedicated staff, and his movements were shrouded in secrecy. Hitler's self-perception was a dangerous cocktail of grandiosity and insecurity. He saw himself as a visionary, a man of destiny chosen to lead Germany to greatness. This belief, fueled by personal charisma and the fervent adulation of his followers, made him impervious to reason and dissent. Afternoons were typically consumed by war meetings. Hitler, clad in his military uniform, would dominate these gatherings, his voice rising and falling with the ebb and flow of his strategic pronouncements. Maps, covered in a web of colored lines and arrows, adorned the walls, representing the ever-shifting landscape of the war. Despite his self-proclaimed brilliance, Hitler's military decisions were often driven by intuition and a stubborn refusal to acknowledge reality. He would cling to flawed plans even when presented with overwhelming evidence of their folly, blaming setbacks on the incompetence of his generals rather than his own miscalculations. This unwillingness to heed sound advice, coupled with his deep-seated paranoia, created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion within the ranks of the German high command. Hitler's interactions with his generals were a study in contrasts. He could be surprisingly charming and solicitous, but any hint of disagreement could trigger a torrent of abuse. As evening descended, Hitler's paranoia would deepen, casting long shadows over his interactions with even his most trusted companions. He became increasingly isolated, preferring the company of his devoted followers to that of his generals and advisors. Dinner, a vegetarian affair, was a somber event, punctuated by Hitler's monologues on a range of topics, from art and architecture to philosophy and history. His distrust of those around him was palpable. He saw conspiracies lurking in every corner, convinced that his inner circle was riddled with traitors and opportunists. This fear of betrayal led him to isolate himself further, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of loneliness and suspicion. He surrounded himself with loyalists, chosen more for their unwavering devotion than their competence. This constant state of vigilance took a toll on Hitler's mental and physical health. The late hours of the night were Hitler's time for reflection, for grappling with the enormity of his self-appointed mission. He would often work until dawn, fueled by amphetamines and a burning desire to leave his mark on the world. It was during these solitary moments that the true extent of his megalomania became clear. He saw himself as a messianic figure, a man of destiny chosen to reshape the world according to his will. His sleep, when it came, was often fitful, haunted by nightmares of battlefield defeats and assassination attempts. In the silence of his study, surrounded by maps, memos, and the ghosts of his own making, Adolf Hitler, the self-proclaimed savior of Germany, was utterly alone.